talking about the vital necessity to do this. But as people say, hope is not a strategy. And do you have any actual belief or reason to believe that eventually this bill will be paid? And if not, how are you going to make sure Ukraine gets vital weapons and ammunition?
Christian, I have strong confidence that when the House comes back, after they've been out in their districts, hearing from the American people, after they have heard from Ukraine, they have heard from Europe, which, by the way, just passed $54 billion in additional aid itself, that we will do what we have always done, which is defend democracy and freedom around the world, not just for victims of tyrants like Putin, but in our own interest, in preserving a free and open international order. That's what we need to do. We've done it before. And by the way, we have to remember that the bulk of this money is going right back into the U.S. economy to make those weapons, including good-paying jobs in some 40 states across the United States.
This is my video update on this Sunday afternoon, February the 25th. Let's talk about some news. And let's start things off with CNN's interview of Victoria Nuland, Christiane Amanpour's interview of Victoria Nuland, where Christiane Amanpour, she told Victoria Nuland that hope is not a strategy, and then she asked Victoria Nuland about $61 billion. And Nuland's answer was quite revealing. Some people would say that her answer was quite honest. So Christiane Amanpour, a very sophisticated journalist and international correspondent, Miss Nuland, hope is not a strategy. So may I ask you, what happens if you do not get the $61 billion to Ukraine? What happens with the war, Miss Nuland? This has been a question from Christiane Amanpour, a very sophisticated journalist and an international correspondent. And Nuland was like, we will do what we always have done, which is defend democracy and freedom around the world. And by the way, we have to remember that the bulk of this money is going right back into the United States to make those weapons. Oh, man. Anyway, that was a statement from Nuland. With Christiane Amanpour, a very sophisticated journalist and an international correspondent. Interesting that she talks about the hope strategy, Amanpour. I say hope strategy all the time. I wonder if she's watching my videos. I've been saying for a while now that the neocon strategy, the collective West strategy, is the hope strategy. And now you have Christiane Amanpour asking Victoria Nuland, actually telling Victoria Nuland that hope is not a strategy. Very interesting statement from Amanpour, very sophisticated journalist and an international correspondent. So Nuland, on the 22nd of February, she spoke to the DC-based think tank called CSIS. Every time I hear this name, I think of CSI Las Vegas, CSI New York, CSI Miami. But no, this is CSIS, not NCIS and not CSI. This is CSIS, and it stands for the Center of Strategic International Studies / Military Industrial Complex Warmongers, something like that. Anyway, they hosted Victoria Nuland. Once again, all of this is because of the 2-year anniversary of Project Ukraine, which is Nuland's baby. Many people would say that Victoria Nuland, she gave birth to Project Ukraine. So she's the mama of Project Ukraine. And she came to this DC think tank, and she gave an interview to the CSIS. And it's long. It's a long, like around the third, I think like a 30-minute interview, and it's on video, but I've got the transcript here in front of me, and I'm going to read you some parts from this interview because listening to Nuland, you get an idea what the strategy is for Project Ukraine, because Nuland is running the show with regards to Project Ukraine. Many rumors in the Pentagon actually say that it was Nuland who planned the entire spring-summer super-duper counteroffensive. These are rumors, but in the Pentagon, there are some anonymous officials who actually dubbed the summer-spring counteroffensive as Nuland's counteroffensive. Anyway, Nuland, she runs the show with regards to Project Ukraine. So listening to what she has to say, I think, gives some insight as to how things are going with Project Ukraine and what is the neocon strategy with regards to Project Ukraine. So CSIS, they have this transcript up on their website. It has the title, Undersecretary of State Victoria Nuland, the 2-year anniversary of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. They always have to add the word full scale. They always have to put that in there. It can't be invasion, it can't be incursion, it can't be half scale, it can't be medium scale, it can't be anything like that. It has to be full scale. They always have to say full scale because it wasn't a full scale invasion. We know that. 10% of the Russian military into Project Ukraine. But anyway, they have to say full scale invasion. And in this interview, Nuland, she throws out the usual talking points. She talks about the siege of Kiev and how the Russian military is in tatters and 50% of the Russian territory that they took in the opening months of the conflict has now been taken back by Ukraine. And what else? Putin's a dictator. And she talks about Navalny, the freedom fighter Navalny. And she also says that the Ukraine economy has grown by 5%, which is an interesting statement. She's like, even the Ukraine economy has grown by 5%. She admits that the Ukraine economy basically grew 5% from nothing. But she tries to make it appear like the U.S. money has actually helped the Ukrainian economy to reach 5% growth. Anyway, she throws out all the usual stuff that we've talked about on this channel for a year now. The usual talking points: Ghost of Kiev, Zaporozhye Avenger, and Russia's in tatters and stuff like that. And then she talks about the 61 billion. She talks a lot about the 61 billion, how it's absolutely important to get the 61 billion to Elensky. And she also mentions in this interview that the 61 billion, most of it is going to be spent in the United States. So it's great. It's going to create jobs, and it's going to be a big boost for the U.S. economy to make weapons so that more Ukrainians can be annihilated. But hey, it's going to be good for the U.S.'s GDP. But so she talks about that as well. But the interesting part of Nuland's statement, she's also very confident. By the way, she's very confident that the House is going to pass the 61 billion. That's actually what she told Amanpour as well in the interview with CNN. She said that she's very confident that the House is going to pass the 61 billion. So maybe she knows something that all of us don't know. But I've been saying for a while now that money is going to be given to Project Ukraine. I don't know if it's going to be the 61 billion, but something will be given to Project Ukraine. But the interesting part about this CSIS interview with Nuland is where she talks a lot about 2024 and what is in store for Russia and how this war is going to be fought in 2024. And she actually uses the words nasty surprises. She said that Russia is going to get some nasty surprises, echoing what she said when she was in Kiev, where she said that Putin or Russia, they're going to get some surprises in 2024. In this interview, she says that Russia's going to get some nasty surprises. And then she talks a lot. And when I mean a lot, I mean a lot about an asymmetric war on Russia. She actually uses the word asymmetric a bunch of times in this interview. Let me read you a couple of paragraphs, a couple of statements from Nuland at this CSIS interview, where she talks about this 2024 asymmetric war that is going to be waged on Russia. So she was asked by the person interviewing her about the 61 billion and just the general state of the conflict in Ukraine. And Nuland said, and as I said in Kiev 3 weeks ago, this supplemental funding will ensure Putin faces some nasty surprises on the battlefield this year. Nasty surprises. Whatever could Nuland mean? So she was asked by the interviewer about these Ukraine battlefield successes. And Nuland said, most of them have been in the asymmetric realm. the damage they've been able to do to the Black Sea Fleet, surprise attacks in places where the Russians weren't expecting them, good use of some of the long-range fires that the UK and others have helped provide. So the question, I think, is whether you know, with increased US support, many are saying the war will look like it looked in 2023. I think what she's saying here, the way I read this, is she's saying that the successes in 2023 were the long-range missile strikes that hit Crimea, or the missiles and the drones that hit various ships, the attacks on Belgorod. That's what she means as successes in 2023, and she says that all of these were asymmetric strikes. The Russians would categorize these as terrorist strikes. The missiles into Donetsk, drones and missiles into Donetsk, the Russians would say these were terrorist attacks. Nuland is categorizing these as asymmetric successes. She was asked on the possibility of negotiations, and this is what Nuland said. Well, wars generally end in a negotiation of some kind, but we're not going to pick that moment for Ukraine. Ukraine will make those decisions for itself. It needs to be in a strong position, and Putin needs to see that this will just get worse for him before he will move at all at the table. As I said, you know, this current offer is, I keep what I've got, and we'll talk about the rest that's currently yours, and that's not sustainable. But I do think if we can continue to support Ukraine, if they can have a strong 2024 of asymmetric warfare, Putin will probably wait and see what politics bring him. But there is certainly a negotiation to be had when Ukraine is in a stronger position, and you know we've made clear that if our help is wanted, we'll be there. So I believe what she is saying here is that the plan is for this asymmetric warfare in 2024. This conventional war cannot be won. It's almost an admission from Nuland that this conventional war can't be won. She does say that negotiations will happen, so she does say that. But in order to get to a position where the neocons accept negotiations, and this is how I'm reading her statement. Let me know in the comments down below how you read these statements from Nuland. But I think she's saying that in order to get the approval of the neocons for negotiations, a lot of damage has to be done to Russia and to Putin. And this is not going to be damage done to Russia or Putin in a conventional sense, from a conventional war on the battlefield, but this is going to be asymmetric. That's what the plan is for 2024, to wage an asymmetric war against Russia. Now, the interviewer understood this, and he asked the next question, which I think is very relevant, because if you're talking about an asymmetric war, are you talking about it being confined just to the battlefield, or are you talking about asymmetric warfare in Russia, into Russia, on Moscow, on Belgorod, towards Rostov, into Crimea? And that was the question that the interviewer posed to Nuland. So he asked Nuland, are you talking about hitting Russian territory? And she said, I'm obviously not going to talk about our private messages to Ukraine. I would simply say that when you see the asymmetric things that Ukraine is now able to do, it is matching things that Russia has already done largely. So, you know, when you listen to Nuland, chief neocon, the mother of Project Ukraine, and you listen to her talk about an asymmetric war in 2024 being waged on Russia, the neocon thinking, and when you listen to Nuland, this is the neocon thinking that you're getting. That's why it's so important. I think this interview is so important. When you listen to Nuland, you're getting the neocon strategy, and it looks like the strategy is asymmetric war on Russia. Russian territory is absolutely in play. And if you can inflict enough damage to Putin and enough terror onto Russia, then you can push Putin to the negotiating table. That seems to be, in summary, roughly, that seems to be what she's hinting at. Anyway, that is the interview to CSIS. from Victoria Nuland. And now let's talk about the Wall Street Journal, which put out an article with the title, "Will the U.S. Abandon Ukraine?" 2 years after Russia's invasion, America's waning commitment is raising fears that Putin could win the war and that Europe may be on its own in future conflicts. So what this Wall Street Journal article is saying is that there will be no peace in Ukraine until after the elections. That is what this Wall Street Journal article is about, and it uses the usual officials that it has in its pockets. The collective West media, they bring out those officials that make the statements to the Wall Street Journal, and they give out the thinking of the Biden White House and the permanent state as to how the conflict in Ukraine is going to unfold. And the thinking in the Biden White House, the thinking in the permanent state, is that for 2024, there will be no peace talks, there will be no ceasefire. We have to get Ukraine past the 2024 U.S. elections. Actually, this article even talks about getting Ukraine past the EU elections, which are not elections at all, the EU appointments in the summer, and then getting Ukraine past the 2024 elections in the United States. Only then will the Biden White House and the permanent state entertain any type of secession to the hostilities if the Biden White House is in power after 2024, and if the Biden White House is not in power in 2024, and if it is Trump that wins the election, well, then I think we all know what the permanent state is going to do with regards to Project Ukraine. They will blame the collapse of Ukraine on Trump. We already know the playbook there, but the Wall Street Journal article is saying it very clearly that in 2024, the plan is to keep Ukraine afloat until the elections have passed. Officials in Washington and European capitals are skeptical about the prospects of any peace talks with Russia and discount any possibility of a deal before the U.S. presidential elections in November. So that is the plan. Keep the Elensky regime in power. Maybe keep the Elensky regime in power. I don't know. Maybe they swap out the Elensky regime, but keep Ukraine afloat until November 2024. And one of the reasons that the Wall Street Journal highlights for this policy in 2024, which is no peace, no negotiations with Russia, is because the Biden White House has committed itself to as long as it takes. They keep on saying as long as it takes, as long as it takes. And if Ukraine was to collapse, or if the Biden White House was to agree to any type of negotiations with Putin, with Russia, well, then it would send a bad signal, not only to the Europeans, but also to the U.S. permanent state political class, right? To the neocons and the neo-libs. You were saying for as long as it takes, Biden White House, for the past 2 years, you've been going on and on about as long as it takes, and now you're sitting down with the Putin. How dare you? You know? So basically, the Wall Street Journal is saying that the Biden White House has kind of boxed itself in with its rhetoric, with its as long as it takes mantra, if you want to call it that. And another reason for the reluctance of the Biden White House to sit down with the Russians and to find a peace with regards to Project Ukraine has to do with the fact that so much money has already been invested in Project Ukraine, and they simply cannot give in to the Putin. That is what the Wall Street Journal is saying in this article. The sunk cost fallacy. They've invested so much that they just cannot sit down with Russia in 2024. They would prefer to invest more into Project Ukraine, and maybe the hope strategy. Maybe something comes out of 2024 that will be in their favor, and then they can sit down with Putin, but after the elections are done. It goes back to what Victoria Nuland said. 2024, keep Ukraine afloat, asymmetric war, nasty surprises onto Russia. And after these nasty surprises, then Putin will be forced to sit at the negotiating table with us, but after 2024. So that is what the Wall Street Journal article is saying. Now, let's talk about the South Carolina primaries, since we're talking about the U.S. election. And not much to say here. Trump won. He was expected to win. He got around 60% of the vote in South Carolina. Neocon Nikki got 40%, 39% or something like that. Completely expected. No surprises here. Nikki Haley lost her home state, and many people are asking, why is Nikki Haley still running? Why is she still in this thing? Well, Nikki Haley, she gave a speech once the election was called in South Carolina, and she said, I'm a woman of my word. She said, I'm not giving up. I told you all that I'm not going to give up, and I'm a woman of my word, and I'm not going to give up. That was Nikki Haley's statement after she got thumped by Trump in her own home state. And everyone knows that she's not going to be able to win any single state. Everyone knows it. Even she knows it, but she refuses to drop out. And everyone is asking the question, why? Why doesn't she drop out? Does she know something that we don't know? Has she been promised something that she's not telling us? Obviously, she's not going to say anything. If she was promised that they would find a way to remove Trump and she would be the nominee, is she staying in this because she's getting money from Democrat donors and it's easy money? Yes, she humiliates herself and she looks like a buffoon, but if it means getting 10 or 20 or 30 million, then buffoon away, I guess. Is she working for the Democrats? And is the strategy to keep Trump spending money on the primaries so that he doesn't have to shift the money to the general election? Everyone is asking, why is Nikki Haley in this thing? I don't know. Maybe it's all of the above. Who knows? But my hunch, if I had to take a guess, if I had to take a wild guess on this, I would say that she's been promised stuff by the permanent state, by the deep state, and she's waiting for those promises to come true. Just like Elensky has promised stuff, just like Pashinyan has promised stuff. I think it's the same script. If I had to take a guess, that's what I think is going on here. Just like Yolanda has been promised stuff. They get promised all of these things. You're going to be the next president of Russia. You're going to conquer Russia, Elensky, Pashinyan. You're going to get into the EU and NATO. Nikki Haley, you're going to be the Republican nominee, and eventually you're going to be the first woman president. So I think she's been promised these things, and they believe these things because they have the deep state sitting them down and telling them all these things, and they buy into this stuff and they believe this stuff, and here she is, getting completely crushed in South Carolina, and she's like, I'm not going to drop out. I'm a woman of my word. I'm going to stay in this race. So anyway, and I'm sure the money is also very good. I'm sure the money is very, very good. So let's do some clown worlds and we will wrap this video up. I'm doing pretty good on time. So clown worlds. So these are like pre-clown worlds / clown worlds. So the first thing I want to talk about is the celebrations that took place in Kiev and the Collective West leaders that showed up in Kiev. It was Ursula, Trudeau, De Croo, and who else? And Meloni. Am I missing somebody? Oh, and Boris Johnson. What the hell was Boris Johnson doing there? Who knows? In what capacity was Boris Johnson in Kiev? Like as what? As Bojo the Clown? As what? Why did he show up to Kiev? And then Boris, he put out a whole bunch of statements saying, I'm sure that Kiev is going to win. He put out a whole bunch of TikToks and video statements about his confidence that Ukraine is going to win this conflict. But as what capacity was Boris Johnson in Kiev? I'm sure he's been ordered by the permanent state to deliver some news or something to Elensky. That has to be why Boris Johnson is in Kiev. Anyway, as far as official official dignitaries. dignitaries. Ursula, Trudeau, De Croo, and Meloni. I don't think I'm missing anybody. Those were the leaders that showed up in Kiev, and they held all kinds of events and memorials and stuff like that. They made all kinds of statements, as long as it takes, right? Trudeau said that, as long as it takes. And then Trudeau gave Elensky $3 billion. But did you notice that there were no Americans for the 2-year anniversary of Project Ukraine? What does that tell you? If Ukraine was winning this conflict, if Ukraine had any chance to win this conflict, even the slightest, most remote chance of winning this war, there would have been a Blinken or a Sullivan or a Nuland or a Harris or maybe even a Bidenopoulos in Kiev. But what does it tell you? That basically the globalists, they sent the B team to Kiev. Meloni, Ursula, Trudeau, De Croo. That's who they sent to Kiev. What does that tell you? Not even Macron was there. Was Olaf Scholz there? Nope. I don't even think Baerbock made an appearance. These are the people that they sent to Ukraine for the big 2-year anniversary of the conflict. I mean, they've been hyping this thing up now for 3 months, the collective West. Biden has been hyping this up for the last 3 months. And no one in the U.S. shows up. That has to mean something. So yeah, Canada signed a security agreement with Elensky, and then they gave Elensky $3 billion. Thank you, Justin, for $3 billion. I buy many homes in Vancouver with this $3 billion. So yeah, that was the security agreement between Canada and Ukraine. And as I said, Trudeau, he said as long as it takes. He was memorizing those lines throughout the train ride, all through the train ride from Poland to Kiev. You know that Trudeau was standing in front of the mirror. As long as it takes. No. As long as it takes. No. Volodymyr, we're going to support you for as long as it takes. He was, that Trudeau, he was really pumped up about saying that line. But yeah, as long as it takes, here's $3 billion. And then they signed a useless security agreements. All of these security agreements between Ukraine and the UK, France and Ukraine, Germany and Ukraine, now Canada and Ukraine, they're all useless. It's just useless paper. It's basically, as Alexander put it, these security agreements are an acknowledgement that Ukraine is not getting into NATO. So take these security agreements because you guys are not going to get into NATO. But Italy also signed a security agreement. Meloni signed a security agreement, though they have not disclosed exactly what is in the security agreement. It's super duper secret, the security agreement between Italy and Ukraine. So I don't know. But the video of Meloni driving to Elensky's palace and meeting Elensky. What a video, huh? What a video. Fantastico propaganda. You got to give Elensky credit. His team of producers, they're good. They're very good. It has some nice music. It has the big palace. It shows Meloni driving up to meet Elensky. Elensky comes out the door. The military's like, Elensky comes out the door. He looks both ways. And then, there's Meloni. And Meloni gets out of the car. She's got her hair done up real nice. She's going to meet Elensky, and they hug. She gets a whiff of that Elensky No.5. Her knees start to shake. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. It's Elensky No.5. He smells so good. Meloni said, I could just eat him up. Anyway, they go inside the palace, and they sign their security agreement. Meloni. Oh, Meloni, what a disappointment Meloni is. And Meloni gives an interview to an Italian publication, and I think now we're entering clown world territory. And Meloni gives an interview to an Italian publication, and in this interview she says, and I quote, "If Russia had not invaded Ukraine, Hamas would not have launched such an attack against Israel." That is the Italian Prime Minister, everybody, Giorgia Meloni. I would categorize Giorgia Meloni as a smarter Ursula or a smarter Baerbock. that's kind of how I see Meloni, or a wannabe conservative Baerbock. What Baerbock is to the Greens, Meloni is to the right. I don't know. Could she even be considered conservative right anymore? I don't think so. But yeah, that was her statement. If it wasn't for the Putin, well, then nothing would have happened in the Middle East, in Israel and in Gaza. It's all the Putin's fault, according to Giorgia Meloni. And now let's go to Annalena Baerbock, Annalena 360, who took it to Annalena 720i mode yesterday, speaking about Project Ukraine and talking about the sanctions. We now have the 13th sanctions package that the EU announced. And Annalena, she gave her thoughts on the sanctions. And she said, this is Annalena Baerbock, she said that everyone knew that the sanctions against Russia wouldn't work, but sanctions are important. And here's the video.
Nobody from us, when we started with the sanctions, believed that the sanction package would stop this kind of invasion. Yeah, but sanctions are important.
So that was Annalena 720i. We all knew, everybody knew that the sanctions were not going to work. Everyone knew that the sanctions would lead to a Russian economic boom, but we had to do them. We had to look like we were busy, you know? Oh, man. Annalena Baerbock. She never disappoints, does she? So that is the video, everybody. The Duran.locals.com. We are on Rumble, ODYSEE, BitChute, Telegram, Rockfin, and Twitter X. And go to the Duran shop. 15% off all t-shirts. Take care, everybody.